Okay, used to.
That works.
Thank you.
And the second thing about the fee schedule, this was part of the budget before we came through the process. Before the budget, it's part of the budget we're going to go with.
That's just it's been a long day already. I was out in the heat all morning.
Oh, really?
Actually, it was actually quite nice. We had hot tub most of the morning.
We
Just
tried
about
to
the
bring the
time.
rain back with us.
Yeah, about the time we were wrapping it up, the sun started breaking out. So get out of here.
Yeah, we decided to bring the rain back with us.
Well, that was Saturday. We had the
We saw that on our webcam.
rain Saturday night. Rain was good for a few hours.
Yeah. Oh, good, because we were in Charleston Saturday night. We did rain, once we got down to cold.
Oh, wow.
Is when we hit the rain. It's like, oh.
About a third of the trip, yeah.
No, yeah, no, it wasn't that bad, and I mean, it just rained overnight so while we were stopped for the night. Got up the next morning and pressed on and got to my parents' house by about lunchtime on Friday.
That's great. You and family.
Oh, yeah.
That's really, it's just, you know, it kind of sets the young student at ease. You know.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody around.
Yeah, my parents are only 3 hours south of them, so.
Yeah, even though if he may never call him.
Oh, he does. He does.
Well, good. That's even better. That's even better.
Yeah, oh, yeah. He's the spitting image of my father. It's given me. The
Obviously, the genes were there.
The Haas genes, as far as the height and everything, skipped me and my son.
How tall is he?
He's 6'1".
Okay. That's good height.
Yeah.
It's not too tall.
Oh, no.
See, after about 6 years, you start getting lower back issues.
Yeah.
You don't fit in vehicles or aircraft.
But yeah, he's 6'1". The big thing is his hands. His hands are like that on enormous hands.
My daughter is working with me.
That's my dad.
Her hands are as big as mine.
Oh, wow.
Of course, her
Okay.
fingers are delicate.
Yeah, oh no.
Little girl fingers, but the spread is almost identical.
Yeah.
So everybody that sees her hands says, you should have played her. And then I have a niece who's 20. She tried so hard. She got into musical school, I call it. She went through music school,
Right.
piano, and pianist.
Yeah.
Problem is,
Long, short reach.
she didn't have
Yeah,
the octave and a quarter that she needed.
right.
And so they had, she had to play small pianos, but, it just doesn't happen. So she had to give it up. Now she is an assistant to the mayor of the city of San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
So, I don't know how you get from A to B, but
At least you found something.
she did. San Francisco, all places.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Her mom in the late 60s, early 70s, because I was just old enough to know
Yeah.
what was going on.
Yeah.
Moved to Haight-Ashbury.
Wow.
And was there for a few years. And then moved to New York, stayed in New York, New Jersey, ever since.
Tired?
Me too.
Oh, no. I got it right last night from Charleston.
Yes, sir. Hello. He is his way.
Oh, yeah, no.
Okay. I have some of these layers if you want. Those are questions.
Oh, yeah, no, I haven't received anything.
No, those are for you to create. So how was school today? Day one?
Any improvements?
Oh,
That's
day
right, they started on Monday, right?
No, I think, yeah, still a treasure hunt. Yeah, I think they're gonna send us to some other specialist now, a pulmonary specialist.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
she'll have everything checked by then, huh?
yeah,
Bless her heart.
yeah. Yeah, getting to be
Yeah, good, well, thank you.
never ending.
Hello, how are you?
Until you wind it down.
How are you? Good.
Yeah.
I'll explain. I'll explain after.
What are you gonna explain?
Why you have this?
Oh,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Oh, of course, that's not a comprehensive list.
yeah. Yeah, it's just,
All right.
right. Yeah.
Okay, so my folder where?
But someone's, anybody?
Right.
Solving the problem has a limited lifetime. If it ain't done, if it ain't done.
Sunglasses?
Limited lifetime, then. Well,
all right.
yeah.
Most of them are pretty good.
Not cold. No, not. Cold 16, carbon 16. I heard that this from the young lady who's doing the archaeological work.
Severe
She said that
weather.
the half-life of coal is long enough for the ability to figure out how old something is they're using that. You know, 50 or 100 years. You know, that puts you in the century, but it's not going to bring you down.
Yeah, not down to like 10 years.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, put it in this epoch. It doesn't give you decades. No, I haven't. Where was it posted? Oh, great.
Is there?
I didn't do this for years and years and years. I found it, just said,
I don't understand that.
They decided
I mean, are we not a little outside Texas? Yeah.
their name via Facebook.
But why is it okay to say this is okay to say? Because she goes to that church.
Alsace, Texas.
And isn't our church is supposed to houses? Anyway, don't get carried away.
All righty.
I may go get it between meetings.
There she is.
Hello, thank you so much for coming. Hope that answered any questions.
Is it that time? We good?
touch it.
This stuff is, there we go.
Good. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order at 4:30. This is a regular called meeting with a special work session. Sorry, let me do that again. This is a special work session on the budget, which will be followed by the regularly called meeting. So we're meeting at 4:30 for a work session with the following items, which will be, Mr. Leroy will discuss 2020 budget revenues. So, let the record show everyone's here, right? Yes. And we have our honored guest is Ms. Dixon. You either love her or hate her. She's the one that does your property values. And what I'd like to do is I just pulled some property from you guys and myself that you can look at as she explains. And Leroy, you want to tell them quickly what we asked her to?
So basically, Ms. Dixon, thank you again for stopping by. We appreciate that. She's going to give a brief overview of how the whole property tax process works. She'll talk about the different type of exemptions and how those come into play when calculating our rates. And so if y'all are okay, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ms. Dixon so she can go ahead and get started. So Ms. Dixon, you have the floor.
And I've given them this, and it's mine, so don't anybody disclose.
So it's actually their properties, is that what it is?
This is, the first one, I'll just gave mine out, so we can look at mine, I'll give you a copy.
Okay.
And I've got the others also that I have to show theirs.
Okay, so if you go to the second page, it's got the property values on it. It shows her total appraised value of $242,810 with a homestead cap loss of $11,238. And what that is by law, every time property is reappraised, it can only go up 10% per year. So anything above that 10% is exempted off. So she has a homestead cap loss of $11,238. Giving a total assessed value of $231,572, which is what her taxes would be based on. So then if you take her $231,572,
Hopefully it's wrong and I owe less. Could it be? I hope so.
so it would be $231,572, divided that by 100, because the tax rate is based on per $100 value, and times your current tax rate of .50885, her city tax portion would be $1,178.35. See if I'm right.
Now, my exemptions, would you explain how those?
And so that is, the only exemption you have is the homestead cap loss, which is the value that is anything above the 10% per year. So your previous was 210,520 in 2018. So if you would take that 210,520 times 110%, your maximum value would be the 231,572. So that is then the difference between the assessed and appraised is what the cap loss is. And so that is for your particular one. There also is a $10,000 exemption for disabled persons and over 65, which that's not state mandated. Like the homestead cap itself is state mandated. The disabled person and over 65 is a local option that was put into place. I don't even remember what year it was put in place in the city. It's been there a while. And then any property that has a disabled person exemption and over 65, they freeze. So whatever they pay at the year that they qualify for the disabled person or over 65, that's the maximum amount of city tax you will receive from that taxpayer. Even their value can triple, you're still going to receive that same amount because it froze due to that disabled person or over 65 exemption. And so what I did, I ran some numbers based on like average home value in the city for 2018, 2019, just kind of to give you an idea of what you're looking at average-wise across the city. The average home value in 2018 was $180,843. With no exemptions, that person with that value would pay $920.22 to the city. If they have a homestead cap, which the average homestead cap for that year was, I think it was 9,000, let me get the numbers real quick.
What year was that?
2018.
18, okay. Thank you.
So the average homestead cap for that year was $9,956. So if you take the $9,956 away from that, that gives you an average taxable value of $170,887, which that same house would pay $869.56, and that's on the average. If you then add a disabled person or over 65 to it, it drops it down to $818.67, but that's only if that's a first-time qualifier. If they had qualified previously, it's possible that their tax for that is going to be less, so you won't be collecting that much from even the average home value because of their freeze that's on there. The other thing that was brought up to me was we have disabled veteran homestead exemption that was actually passed for the first time in 2009. And then since then, they've made some adjustments to it to include surviving spouse and so forth.
Yeah.
And so just the city alone, right, in 2018, there were 17 disabled veteran homesteads, which would mean they were completely exempt.
That's 218?
Yes.
2018, okay.
And so the value you lost just for those disabled veteran homesteads was $3.3 million. So in tax, that's $17,000 that you're losing right there just for your disabled veteran homestead exemptions.
And then-
that was just in 2018. In 2019, the average home value jumped up to $200,203, which gives you a little over $1,000 average per person in the city, with their homestead cap being $14,000, and that would be $948.89 with the homestead cap. With the additional $10,000, it drops it down to $898.01. And then you gained 4 disabled veteran homesteads, so you have 21 now that are paying zero tax, and so you're losing 4.406,556. And based on,
Question on
yes.
disabled veteran exemptions. Is it based on the percentage of disability?
Yes, and these 21 are just the ones who are 100% exempt
100%.
that are paying zero tax.
So we have others in the city?
You have others, yes.
Like
And
myself,
I actually
I'm
have those.
60%.
Right.
So it's a lot. I still pay 40% of the tax. And I think that's the way with every one of them. Is there any place we can go to get the total?
She has it.
You got
I have
that?
those, and I send those to the city when we certify. And right now, you've got 8 properties that are between 10 and 29% for $54,000. Then you have 4 that are 30 to, I think it's 49%, 50%, something like that. And that's $43,500. And then you've got 10 properties that are at the next level, which is up to 69%, and that's $108,000. And then you have 21 of them that are at the maximum from 70% to 100%, but are still employable, that will still pay tax, and you lose $252,000 on those. So you've got a total of 20, 42, almost 50 disabled veteran exemptions throughout the county, throughout the city at different levels of being exempt. And the ones that are 100% for 19, based on 18's tax rate, you're losing $22,000 in value just on that one exemption itself.
And so what about our nonprofits?
The nonprofits, if they are a 501c3 and they can qualify under what's charitable, spiritual, youth, and there's one other one. And then basically city and state, those pay zero tax.
And so would you,
And so I'm showing right now, under those, you're losing 5.6 million in exempt properties. Well, actually, it's 6, because there's 2 different, one's a miscellaneous, and then one's like the city and the state and so forth.
That's the value, correct?
The
That's the
city,
property value, not the tax.
right, it's value, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a little over $6 million in value, not necessarily tax. But
This is not a new thing. This is
No.
occurring every year.
Right.
But
This
these
is
are
continuously,
nonprofits.
yes,
so
that's right.
the tax is very little. Then we also have, you included the new housing that,
Right, I did write that down. In 2018, you gained 4.2 million in new home value, or new value throughout the city, and for 19, you've gained another 4.6 million in new improvement
do we
value.
know if those are exempted or not, any of them?
Those are all taxable.
Okay, good. And there was another question about the land value. So a lot of our homes, I have examples here if you're interested, but some of our places are only appraised by land value because there are no improvements.
Right.
Would you explain that, please? What improvements?
Improvements would be homes or any structures that are on the property. If it's just land, you're going to be priced just as a vacant lot.
And so if it's a home that is not habitable, does that still count as an improvement? Or
We would probably put a nominal amount of value on it, be, very minimal amount if it's non-habitable.
Okay. And then to the last question I have is when we value the land, I myself protested, of course. I lost, but anyway. They told me that determining the value is based upon the way that banks and lenders do it by taking the values of the homes recently sold that are equivalent to the age and the type of home.
Right.
And that's how the values
Right. We
decided.
try to, when we arrive at a value, we try to use the most comparable properties. Basically, it's same size, the home, try to get the same age, same type of structure or construction if possible, and then we will arrive at a value based on what those comps show.
So hypothetically, if we can't keep families that have big homes and they sell their homes and they're big ones, that could increase our land value if we don't keep people here.
It could increase the land values. It also increases the total property value itself. On the land values, we try to arrive at a schedule based on what vacant properties have sold for, because we did have some that were throughout the city that sold in the last couple of years, and it showed to be the average lot in Castroville selling for $50,000. And so we put pretty much that across the board, or, based on, we put a price per square foot on it, and based on size of the property, it'll be either higher or lower, just based on the size itself.
And my last thing, and then I'll open it to them, is our time about, you're watching? So these are things that are by law, and they deserve them. There's nothing we can do, except we could revoke homestead in 65.
The homestead, you don't really have anything on the homestead. The only thing that the homestead affects on you is the cap, and that's state mandated,
Yeah.
so that you cannot.
So we-
But you can revoke the $10,000 disabled person and over 65.
And we don't want to do that.
Right.
But the point is we need to understand, or I'd like everyone to understand, that raising property taxes really doesn't change anything. It doesn't distribute the cost to everybody. It's only certain people, particularly those with rent homes, I understand, because they have no exemptions.
Right. If it's a rental property, they pay full market value.
And young families, which we'd like to have.
Right.
So,
And they can qualify for but it doesn't do anything here because of, but it still will, the cap will give them a reduction if they have a homestead cap on it and the value increases.
thank you so much. Any questions?
I don't have any.
I live in River Bluff Estates, and I guess there was a discrepancy that occurred this year. I have one of my constituents up the road from my house. We have the dry creek bed that runs down, and there was some kind of discrepancy to where they were putting higher taxes on the homes, but they're supposed to take it away because there's part of the property that's that drainage, something or another rule law.
What I think happened with those is, because I think it's only just certain
Yes.
properties that sit
Yes.
on that.
Yes.
And what happened was we implemented the schedule, and the schedule got put in full 100%.
Okay.
And then we had some that, once they came in and showed, and it went before the appraisal review board,
Yes,
I believe,
yes.
and they're the ones that actually made the adjustment.
Okay.
But they took into account the possibility of flooding
Yes.
that would occur
Yes.
if there was ever, and so they would adjust those lots, but only just because of the fact that they're on
Right,
that.
and I'm just making sure they're taking
Right.
care of it, because I had a few people come up.
But can we, let's just, the personal questions, we need to look at our stakeholders. Those are the questions I'd like you to ask. So, are there any more questions about how it affects, in general, our budget? Nothing? Thank you so very much. We appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. And if there's anything that comes up at a later date, just contact the office and we can help you with it.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
We so appreciate you for taking the time to come out here. It's very important.
Thank you, Larry.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon.
All right, now we're going to, after this, which is very important, and we need, hopefully everyone understands that if you have any questions, she's wonderful and be more than happy to help you or someone in her office. Our new interim city administrator is going to introduce our
I'm going to pass
proposed
out, I know we
budget.
discussed revenue today.
Thank you.
So much for coming at 4:30 today.
I've got
But
one.
what I have here is, it's a proposed budget. It's a proposal, it's preliminary, so.
And I'd like to add that you guys, we had several of these, and the purpose for this is because we are pressed for time. So we would like to just ask you to be patient with this workshop and write your questions down and then submit them. And if you have questions that you asked before when we did the other workshops that you want to make sure we covered in this proposed budget, please write them, and Leroy, before the next meeting, will have answers to all of your questions. So I just ask patience with this one. Write your questions down, please, or your comments, and then send them to Leroy so we can expedite this process. And it is a proposed, so definitely write your comments and your questions. Any of highlighters to highlight? All
Okay,
yours.
so I'm going to go and get started. Again, this is the 2020 proposed budget. I know on the agenda, it's talking about revenue, which we'll go ahead and discuss revenue. This isn't the entire packet. What's not included in there are some of the ancillary supplements, like the example would be the salary scale, is just some statistics about City of Castroville, the tax rate and so forth. I'll get that in there before we have the final budget presented to y'all for approval. But right now, what's in here is the revenues for general fund, airport fund, utility fund, special revenue, and debt service. It has the revenues, it has the expenditures tied to it, so. I'm not going to go every single page, but if I can turn to page 12, it's not really page 12, but it says 12 at the bottom, because again, I pulled stuff out. This is the first one that we'll go over. It's the general fund revenue piece of it. And it all kind of ties together with, as far as the tax rate. I know that's an agenda item that we'll discuss shortly in our meeting. That tax rate relies on, as far as how much revenue we're going to get in for the city, which obviously helps build the budget for this upcoming year. So right now, just to let y'all know, I'll go into the tax rate just right quick. What I'm proposing is to go ahead and go out for the max, which is 0.507771. And I'll go into more detail during that portion whenever we get to that agenda item. So on page 12, these are our revenues, our general fund. That's one of the biggest ones besides utility fund. Utility fund is obviously a lot, it's much larger than the general fund. But as far as revenues are concerned, the major revenue sources are sales tax, property taxes, municipal court fees, parks and rec, and just any other miscellaneous revenues that we get in with the city. One thing is as staff was working on the budget, we noticed that on the budget side, there were a lot of budget amounts that were so inflated that looking at our current revenue, our actuals versus what was actually budgeted, there's a big gap in between them. And so what I did was I felt that I needed to really budget on the conservative side, but also look at our actual amounts that we actually have in hard cash. And so you're going to see a lot of, on the budget side, like, wait a minute, why are we going down so much? Well, like this current year, the 18 year that we're currently in, budgets were so inflated that we're not even going to make that much, but yet that's what was approved, that's what was given to y'all for approval. This year, I want to go back and say, I don't want to do that. I actually want to focus on what we actually received. Let's be realistic about our numbers, and then we'll go from there. So, and certainly we can make adjustments throughout the year that would require a budget amendment. So, just right quick, on the sales tax, we had a spike in sales tax, and which is a good thing. On the offset, the more sales tax you get, the less property taxes you get. Vice versa, the less sales tax we get, the more property tax that we'll receive. So, hey, people are shopping here in the city of Castroville. That means they're shopping here, they're here, and we want to continue seeing that trend increase. So I'm proposing on the sales taxes a little over $1,078,363. We'll go down to the property taxes. So that 903, that 984,511, that's dependent on the amount that I'm recommending, that I'm proposing, which is the highest that we can go, the 0.50771. As Ms. Dixon mentioned, we had an increase in assessed values. What does that mean? That means more money to us, so which is a good thing. So going down to the municipal court fees, these are fees that obviously, when there's fines assessed and so forth, they come in, they pay, but then on the flip side, we have to send a portion back out to the state. And so there was to be, again, on the conservative side, I budgeted a little less than what we actually have this year, based on our true numbers. Parks and Rec, as an example, that includes pool, RV, passes, pool parties, and so forth. And so this current year that was adopted, it was about $410,000 that was adopted based on our current numbers now. And there were some numbers that we increased just a little bit, thinking, hey, you know what, we can actually get there. Next year is about $221,800, so there's a big difference there. So again, I can't emphasize more. I'm going back based on what we have today sitting at the bank is what we've collected. So does that make sense on some of these items as far as why I'm budgeting a lot less versus the way we did it last year? Some of the other, on page 13, the other revenue, these are just like the miscellaneous revenues for fees, for permits, copies, and so forth. So we actually increased it a little bit because the permit fees, we collected more than we anticipated. So kind of hopefully that trend will continue. And so that's why on this part, there's a slight increase on that budget amount.
I'm sorry, Leroy, I'm interrupting. Could you tell them about the new legislation in regard to our permit fees?
If you're okay, I might be keen on that. So Brianna, can you touch base on that? I'm sorry, she's here.
Tell us.
We're going to go over it in the city council meeting tonight, but the legislation says that we can't do our residential building fees based on valuation anymore. They have to be based on square footage. So it actually is just going to be an even out, because what I did is I did all the past year, the permit fees that we did, and then I added up all the square footage and I just divided it out. And so now it's just price per square footage, it's 53 cents. But it's going to be about the same as we're doing right now. So
Thank you.
there's not much differentiation.
Great.
On the transfers, that's a big item. I'm definitely still working on that as far as the breakdown. This is just kind of tentatively what I came up with, and so again, this is a proposed budget. I will definitely have a harder number with backup to let y'all know exactly what makes up those numbers. More importantly, more on the utility fund side. That's a big amount that gets transferred every year from utility into general. Without that transfer, there's no way that general could afford what, running the day-to-day operations. I mean, we would be short. There would be a shortfall. But we rely heavily on the utility side. So thanks to John's department for that. But
I'm interrupting again.
That's okay.
If you look at, like, I'm always wanting to clean our own house, but If you look at the occupational tax on page 13, this is home occupation, right? These are businesses that are in homes, and we should be getting revenue from them. And we aren't. You can see we aren't. So that's something we can look at. Also, the pet licenses, I know there's more than 300. No, $300 would be, what's how much does it cost? $5? $10.
Oh, 10,
So that means we have what,
30,
30 pets?
which isn't true, but.
We need
Hopefully
more
with the-
pets.
With the new code.
Anyway,
I mean, with the code
so these are
enforcement.
little things that we can get, you know, some money with.
Sure,
Sorry.
that's okay. Before I move on, do you have any questions as far as some of the revenues that why I guess under the estimated column, you know, do we need to go back and adjust higher, lower? I mean, this is based on what I've seen today with numbers. So I kind of need those input or what your thoughts are on this.
I was just looking at some of the park and recreation fees that we had adopted last year are significantly higher than you are proposing or estimating. And I take it that you are looking back at the actual 2018 numbers rather than the proposed 2019 numbers on those.
Correct.
Will you write that down and make sure he does it? Because he's going to
He's already
forget.
done it.
On
Thank you.
your
I
question.
wrote mine down.
Good.
But I just want to make sure it's not a typo. Under delinquent ad valorem tax, we went from 5,500 to 75,000.
That's correct. We received, because I actually looked at that one this morning, and I thought, wait a minute, is that right? So I went back and pulled the history, and we actually received a lot more than we anticipated. Now, last year, there was only, estimated was 5,500, but we actually today have brought in over 75,000.
Okay.
So,
I wrote down,
yes.
so-
Okay, guys, remember, we've only got 20 more minutes here. Thanks. All right.
As I mentioned on the transfers, I will have more backup for you guys, so to give you all that backup. I know that those are important, but again, without those transfers, there was no way that general fund could sustain the day-to-day operations of this organization. So the other parts right after, like starting on page 14, these are all the actual budgets that I think y'all heard from every department as far as what their wants are, their needs are. This includes payroll, so we can go over that, or we can skip over that and go straight to the next revenue fund, which would probably be airport fund or utility fund. Let me see what's next.
I
So-
prefer we do, and like I said, if we have time at the end, then we could go back
Sure.
and question.
Okay. So on page 60, yes, on 60, that'll be the utility fund, and I have Mr. Gomez here. If there's any questions, it certainly could help, but I'll try to answer most of them if I can. So page 60, it's the actual utility revenues.
60,
That was 16?
60,
Oh,
60, I'm sorry, yes,
60.
ma'am.
Oh, okay. And that's what we're running on.
Yes. Same here,
Literally,
just
yeah.
when you look at those numbers, you look at the actual adopted, well, look at the actual for 2018. For utility sales, just in general, we ended up at 6.7 million. What was adopted this year was 7.1. But when you look at our numbers now, we've only are at about 5.8, almost 5.9. So there's no reason why I should go and budget 7 million when we know we're not going to get that. So just looking at each line item, I went line by line, looking at history, looking at averages, and just kind of went down from the sale of utilities, the services, and of course, just any of the other miscellaneous revenue.
Can I ask a general question? In this document that we have here, is it correct to assume that you have no plans for growth for the development that we're discussing in here yet?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. I didn't want to,
Just wanted to make
yeah,
sure.
I put that in there.
No.
So,
Thank you.
again, I'm not sure how much in depth we want to go. We can go line by line, but the biggest one, if you look at like our water sales, that was almost consistent than what we had adopted this year. But electric sales, they weren't. I mean, adopted 3.5 million, but we're proposing 2.8 just because of what we've collected so far.
And I'm interrupting again, but remember your water went up. Last administration made water higher and electric lower.
Sure.
Sewer a little too. Sewer a little too.
Yeah, and sewer. So that shows And then we're going to add water adjustments, so we need to really rethink things. Okay.
Mr. Dyer, thank you for bringing that to my attention, though. Development is not in here just because I don't want to. Yeah, okay. I know we're pressed for time, but again, utility sales, the services, other revenues, bottom line, when it's all said and done, we're going to estimate about a little over $6 million in revenues for utilities compared to the 7.2 what was budgeted and approved this year. So.
Better safe than sorry.
If you go and turn to page, I guess page 81. This is the water acquisition fund. Just kind of went based off last year, we went on averages, and we actually decreased it by about 5,000. So that's a plus, that's a good thing. Looking at revenues and expenditures, we're obviously going to be over in revenues than expenditures, which is good. So this is the water acquisition fund. I don't know too much about that fund. I'm still trying to learn these other funds that I'm not used to seeing, but I don't know unless anybody else to share the history behind that. But right now we're sitting at about 415,000 is kind of what we're anticipating in revenue. Within that number also includes the beginning balance. So what happens is that where the audit had ended last year, they brought that balance over, so I made sure that we included that number, plus any new revenues that we're collecting, that would be our total available funds, minus any of the expenditures, and then whatever's left would be our ending balance on these here. So
The water surcharge, what is that exactly? Is that the drainage? No, that's the EEA? I don't expect, it doesn't matter, we'll look it up. I'll write my own question, I should be. And the water lease is still the airport water.
Correct. Yes. The next page, on page 82, is the water impact fees. That's Fund 25. I believe this is a charge that's on the water bill, if I'm not mistaken, right? Isn't there a fee that's assessed with it? So, okay.
Impact fees, that would be hookups, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'll be
Connection with it.
Hookups. Yep, Mr. Gomez agrees.
Next page, on page 83, would be the sewer impact fees. I guess the same thing, but this is for sewer. So. If we go about 2 pages over on page 85, this is the airport fund, and Mr. David is here if there's any questions that I can certainly try and answer as well. So same thing here, last year, I'm not going to take that beginning balance, I'm going to take that out of the picture for now, but last year we anticipated about $592,000 in anticipated revenues, and this year we're good. Airport is doing very well as far as what they're collecting. They're on target. And so right now we're going to propose about $523,000. Remember, within that number is, if I remember, there was that depreciation line item for about over $200,000 that we talked to the auditor. She's like, I don't have to include that in there. That's more of an audit adjusted entry, so you can take that out. Because that made it seem like his budget was a lot higher, but really and truly it wasn't. It was when you take that 200 plus out, okay, now we're back down to like the 500 where it should be. So then as a breakdown right below that with the personnel, maintenance and operations and so forth. But you can see here, wait a minute, so you're telling me we're going to bring in about $523,000, but yet he wants to spend $720,000. So what's going to happen there? So one of two things. One, we go back and look at numbers. We look at like the capital outlay line items, because that's going to be your biggest expenditures. We have to go back and maybe say, you know what, let's have that 5-year plan. If we can't do it all this year, let's break some of it down to next year, the year after, and so forth, to bring that number down. And then also looking at the fund balance, the savings account. What does he have in the bank that truly, okay, do we want to take out the full difference and do it all at one time, or we do it in phases? So there's a couple of things that we definitely want to look at. And that would be the same thing for the general fund, the utility fund, and so forth. So, yes, sir.
Is the airport manager full-time or half-time?
This current year, he's half-time. We're proposing in the budget to go full-time next year.
This is full-time.
Yes, sir. again, those transfers out, we'll have definitely have that backup. My understanding it's for the, just the admin cost is what I found, but I will have a description of for each one of those transfers ins and outs, so y'all know exactly what those are for. So,
And the MV Youth Baseball, is that, we've got 8,000 for the leases changed?
so my understanding, okay, so they pay $1 a year, but I believe the Parks and Recs Department picks up the rest, right? Is that what
Yes.
that is?
Would you explain it, please?
Well, based on some information we looked in the budget, it looks like the Parks makes a transfer of $8,000 to the airport fund for the athletic fields.
Thank you.
That amount that I guess is transferred, that was the amount that was set, I guess, several years
So that is
back.
the fair market value, the annual fair market value of the land that we lease to them. So in order to compensate the airport, we have to provide that money to the airport.
Okay, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
Well,
That's
we'll
what-
see
If I'm not
about it.
wrong, the fair market value several years back.
But that was from back,
$18,000.
yeah, that was from back then.
We'll talk about it
That's
later.
what we're
That's
doing.
another
That was
issue.
covered in the review.
But that's what we're doing right now. We're giving them $8,000.
Yes, sir.
We are giving we are giving the airport
Yes,
$8,000
yes,
from our money
from Parks
because
and
of the
Rec.
baseball
Correct.
field,
I got you.
even though they say they lease it for $1.
But that lease
Okay, fine,
was
we'll
done
talk
by
about
the
it later.
city.
That's fine, we're going to talk about it
Doesn't
later.
relieve the obligation to
We'll
pay
talk
the
about
airport.
it later, Mr.
When
Dyer,
is later?
after I talk to the attorneys.
Oh, so we're going to have another meeting on that, okay.
No,
How,
That'll
I
be
think you say
executive.
you're talking to the attorney. I think we have some ordinance about talking to the attorney, that not everybody can just include them there, can just pick up the phone and call. I believe there is an ordinance about that.
thank goodness you found that, because I just sent an email out about that, asking all of you to fill out a log when you call the lawyer, because I was not aware of that ordinance. Thank you. I'm sure you all got the email. Great.
No.
So now we're going to log it, just as Mr. Byer said, because there is an ordinance.
I'd
Thank
like
you.
to see, and I'd like to see your log sometime.
We're going to talk to the lawyer today.
Pardon?
We'll talk to the lawyer today.
One of the things, if I may, on the facility rentals, again, as I mentioned, David, they're on target with revenue. They're doing very well. They're bringing in the money, except Hangar 3, and David, that's a hangar that's not in use, correct? It's currently not in use, Hangar number 3? That's-
Hangar 3 is being occupied by the occupants of Hangar 2 until we get Hangar 2 fixed.
Okay. So that's why you see that.
Back on something you brought up, Mayor. This log, is this an ordinance that's going to be passed, or is this just something you want?
What?
The log that you
No, you
want.
said there's an ordinance already.
I know there's an
So we
ordinance
won't
about it,
read the
I
law.
haven't got it right in front of me, but is there in there a law that everyone is supposed to use?
I will put this on the agenda and we can discuss it. Once I present the ordinance that you're talking about, and then council can present it. And that's not, let's talk about the budget, because we can talk about that later.
Well, you brought it up,
I did?
yes, about the log, you did bring it up.
Oh, no, sir, yes. I
Yes,
was
ma'am,
gonna-
you did.
I know I did. I'm talking about the baseball contract. We're going to discuss with the attorney.
Can we
I
get,
said "we." Sorry.
on the airport, can we just get a ballpark figure about what percent recovered are we from all the damage that we had from the big storm? And are we moving right along? Are you happy with it?
I'm happy with it except for the delay in commercial Hangar 2. Everything else is done,
About what percent are we done?
75.
Really?
Thank you, that's good.
Wow.
It's commendable. You've done a good
I'm
job.
complete except for the one hangar. Everything is done but the one.
When you
hangar.
say the one
Is that why you're
hangar,
having a
that's,
problem getting the insurance?
No, I got the insurance,
That was,
and I can talk to you whenever you want about that.
when you say the one hangar, that's the skydive hangar?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any questions on the airport fund before we go to the next one? Okay, so if you turn to page 95, these are the special revenue funds. These funds are pretty much, we have not no control, but we can only do certain things with these funds. We can't buy whatever just because we say, hey, let's go buy a vehicle with one of these funds. We can't. By law, they tell us exactly what we can do with these funds. So first one is the police department training. Sorry. Yeah, the T-close, whatever it's called. Oh, you're right. Thanks.
I got it.
So,
We all got Lisa. It's spelled wrong. We all
Yes.
got it. Highlight.
Please, let me know. No, so you got the police department training, followed by the DEA drug forfeiture, the municipal court security, the municipal court technology, the library memorial fund, the Alsatian House project, the Berry House, the hotel occupancy tax. All these special accounts, we have an actual checking account at the bank that every month Hilda reconciles monthly. So there's lots of accounts that we're constantly having to reconcile, and it's mainly because we have all these special revenue funds for the most part. So I can go back to each one to talk about each one of them, but again, we're pretty much set as far as we're limited on what we can do with them. So the last fund would be the debt service, page 104. And if y'all recall, maybe a month ago when Mr. Allison was here, the financial advisor from NE Allison, he had given a breakdown of all of our debt, our current debt, and we have most of our debt is through the Texas Water Development Board, and then we have a couple of small ones here that we of course have to budget for, and so it's the 2012 refunding and they're both 2012 refunding, but one was a 2003 certificate of obligation, and the other was 2004. So these are pretty much set.
2004 bonds we refunded. Do we know what they were for?
I don't know, but I will get that for you.
2004, what was the other?
2003.
2003.
And basically, y'all refunded these back in 2012, meaning y'all pretty much went out and said, hey, we can either lower our interest rate or save money on interest, so we're going to go ahead and refinance per se. And so this happened back in 2012. And one of the questions I'd asked Mr. Allison when he was here, are there any other upcoming refunding opportunities? And because we're so low on our rates that there's really not, which is a good thing. So, but part of the M&O and INS tax rate, that INS tax rate is going to help pay for these two bond payments that we pay twice a year. So I know it was short and sweet, but do you have?
We've got 5 more minutes for questions.
Do you have
Or
any
10?
questions,
You
or-
think we can do 10?
Sure,
Are
absolutely.
you guys okay with 10? And then we'll take a little break before we start the regular.
I'd like to ask a question on the library.
Yes, on the
Page 27,
okay.
staffing. So we're at 3 full-time equivalents for this year, and so we're cutting them a half a person.
So really, there's 3 part-time and there's 1 full-time now. So I just made those 3 of the part-timers. I took 2 away, that becomes 1 full-time, and then we're left with about half, so it's like 2.5. Because we're not replacing the current.
I know it's not the time to talk about it now, and I'll put a question about it, but in general, since I'm the liaison to the library, I know there's going to be a cut in programs in the library. And it's very important that when we get to the point where we discuss this, that everybody understands what programs are going to have to be cut, because there isn't enough people to do them. And I just want to make sure we are aware of that when we agree on the final number.
Sure.
I have a question. On
Yes, sir.
page 82, we were talking about the water impact fees, and you were talking about the beginning balances of each of those years, and I'm showing that we had a beginning balance in 2018 of $281,000, but in 2020, we're only showing a beginning balance of about $83,000.
This year, there was, what was adopted, there was a $300,000 system improvement, so it took away from that 383.
Okay, so those debits will be shown later?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
very
sir.
good, thank you. So it's just a lot of money.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
You guys want to ask any questions? You certainly may. No question? Come on. Lloyd,
They read it first.
Brianna,
For sure.
If nothing else, then
Mr. Otis.
we have a discussion on it again.
Does that mean we can't call a meeting then?
What?
I would like to discuss one thing, since you have a moment.
Relevant to what we're talking about?
Yes, to this draft budget.
Okay.
In order for us to do the next meeting, we're going to have to understand what the tax rate that you used to build this budget is. Because you're going to ask us in the next meeting to vote on the maximum possible tax rate that we're going to be considering.
Right.
And I came to the meeting tonight not knowing you were going to hand this to me, and I'm very glad that I have it. But it's hard to vote on a maximum tax rate when you don't know what the M&O and INS is.
That was the one last year.
Okay, so we just brought the numbers forward.
It was from last year, but
So
Ms. Leroy will explain to you that if we go to the rollover, well,
if I may, so our current tax rate, and I should have had it on the slide, I'm sorry I didn't do
Yeah, we didn't.
that. Our total tax rate this year is .508853. And after the tax office did their numbers based on the assessed values, they said, okay, here's a breakdown of your current rate for this year, the proposed rate. The max rate for this year is .507771. So we know that that's the max that we can go. So to me, it made sense to go out for the very max unless we decide to go out and ask the voters out there, hey, we want to go out even higher than that, then okay, that's one thing. But the only option I had was to go out for the highest rate, which is a 5.07771. And so we could go lower than that if you like, but that means we wouldn't be able to do many things that what each department's asking for. And so I thought, well, let's just shoot for the max rate, which is that.
so Mr. Otis has a question.
Can I speak from here, do I need to come to the podium, or are we all?
Can you hear?
No, he needs to go to the podium. so
Okay,
he
you
can
have to go to the podium.
And say his name, please.
Yeah, Michael Iltis, 510 Washington Street. The main question I had is everybody up here have a list maybe of all the issues that need addressing in the city of Castroville, mainly infrastructure-wise? See, when the budget was put together, there's some things that haven't been addressed in 50 years that are way overdue for being addressed, but I haven't heard or seen any plan or, even the list of issues to look at to see what all's on that list, so. Especially in District 2, which, Paul's probably pretty privy to.
Infrastructure is high on our list of things that need to be
Drainage,
addressed. water
mains, 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, rusted out water mains, drainage that, is not only non-functional, but been made worse by the city itself when they pave cross streets and block off the drainage, and it's terrible. When the part of one of the bonds we're paying off now is for the drainage underneath 90 on Naples. The drainage underneath 90 is 6 inches above grade. I don't know if you know that or not, but then to correct that, they put the lattice work in, the horizontal. And then as soon as it rains, it clogs that up. Now you're back to, the water has to rise 6 inches above normal before it'll even start draining again. Things like that. There's all sorts of issues. The deteriorating pipes in Naples Street.
Mr. Otis, Mr. Fredericksburg over there, I call him Fredericksburg, he's our streets person.
You know what?
That gentleman right there in the corner, he is our streets person.
Okay.
So he would be excellent for you to speak with, because we're working with Public Works on our streets, and your comments are exactly the same ones we voiced.
But,
And he would be your man to talk to.
right, okay.
Basically, your answer, do we have a list? No.
Yes, we do. Ask David.
I haven't seen it.
Well, not yet.
Well, that's why I answered no.
Well, the list is with staff. We will give it to you.
I mean, I don't even know if you're aware of the fact that the old pipes are galvanized pipes. As galvanizing goes away, it leaches lead into the water system, and, that's what people are drinking,
Yes.
And I guess the way to bypass that is when they do the water testing, they flush it for a long time. You let the water flush all the old leached out lead out of there, and then take a sample, and it doesn't show up, if you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So a lot of issues we need to address, but, I don't know if you all have that list. I guess maybe you do, or?
I can't speak for the water or wastewater, but I can say for streets, we are looking at not just trying to find plans, but actually something next year the citizens can see movement and not just plans set aside. I know the mayor is very empathetic to the whole city's problems, but wants to see streets move forward. And I know John's looking at water and wastewater and trying to figure it out. I believe besides Roy and Deborah and a few other, I'm the only manager that's been here for a year. So,
And that's part of the problem. There's so much institutional knowledge been lost over the years, and I talked to you on the phone that day, yeah. And he had a good meeting with, get up to speed on what's going on, or what had been going on, and the history of all
You
this.
should talk to,
We've talked, and he's one, I guess, on that.
That's all I've got.
Part of our problem is that you can't tell by looking at a water meter or even a valve what kind of lines come into it, and that information is unknown.
Well, I mean, the guy, I forgot the young man's name that works for the City and Public Works that repairs the broken lines
Yes.
and does the
Yeah.
water testing and all that.
Yeah.
I was talking to him, and he's the one telling me all
Right.
about it. So he knows a whole lot
Right,
about it.
so
what
he'll
it
know
is.
where those galvanized pipelines are, but there's others that unless we actually dig them up, look at them, we don't know what they are. So
Right.
that is a big problem, and as we've said, the institutional knowledge of who put those in and when and what they put in is lost.
Mr.
We don't have
Gomez
it.
can
There
address
is a
that.
whole older plan of 2015 that I saw.
Right.
And I haven't seen one since that year.
Yeah.
Right.
Replacement on the water side.
And the issue I've got is, the reason I even brought that up is because of the disproportionate amount of funding in one district and sometimes over other districts. That's one of the oldest tax-paying districts out there. They've been paying taxes for years, as opposed to some of these newer districts where they're fairly new. There's been very little proportionate taxes paid, yet the newer districts are getting all the funding for all sorts of upgrades. The Old Town district has got nothing done, if you know where I'm coming from.
I do.
And one thing I'm going to get with John and them about is, because other people have come up to me, is we've had projects approved in past years, and then they were put on hold, and then they've been forgotten about.
As well as his project. So it's all of them. He has
It's
a very-
across the city.
He has a very good point.
Yes.
And he's been talking to Mr. Gomez.
We'll be getting our list. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And feel free to grab him, that guy.
He knows where to find me.
Oh, yeah.
So we will, yes, sir.
So one thing I would recommend, if y'all like, I know we have our next meeting, or coming up, the town hall meeting is September the 4th at 6 o'clock. What are your thoughts about having a special call meeting, another budget meeting on that day at 4:30, and then right after that, we can go into the town hall meeting to discuss openly, like, okay, let's look at more of the revenues and expenditures. So, yes, ma'am,
So September 4th,
at 4:30.
is that good for everyone? September 4th, 4:30?
It's on my calendar.
Yeah, good.
Everybody good?
That's a Wednesday?
Yes, sir.
Good?
The town hall
Sheena?
meeting's at 6 over at
Mr. Carey?
Yes, I've got it on my calendar.
Okay.
Works.
We got it. So September 4th at 4:30.
All right, thank you all so much for that.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, I'm going to close this at 5:20, I can't see.
23.
5:23 is what I have.
I got, my computer says 5:23.
Oh, all right. Unless you have some more questions that you'd like to discuss, that'll give us a break between starting the actual regularly called meeting. Is that okay with everyone, or would you like to?
No, good.
All right. Okay, I have a motion.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.